I don't have footage of my first Elden Ring playthrough. I played the game on release and had a pretty terrible time. Exploring the world and experiencing the story definitely carried me through it, because what I was trying to do was force a sword and board quality build without ever using Ashes of War. I ended up swapping to a strength build and using jump attacks with greatswords, but I still avoided speccing into Mind to get more FP to really commit to any Ashes, and tried to mid-roll my way through the game. I hated it constantly. Not every minute of it, mind you, but the game became so oppressive that I ended up summoning another player to help me beat Melania, which I still remember vividly because it was such a big moment for me. I even used glitches to hold Radagon and Elden Beast in place and make them a free win. At the end, I breathed a sigh of relief and put the game down, having felt thoroughly defeated. As a consequence, I complained on stream and to friends at the time that several bosses felt impossible. Of course, with a little self-awareness, I figured that this is just who I am. I get a little tilted at games that kill me a bunch or set me back a ton. I've done it with Dark Souls. I've done it with The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. I've done it with Dragon Age 2. I've done it with L.A. Noire. I've done it with Nier Automata. I've done it with Dragon's Dogma, and I've certainly done it with every multiplayer and survival horror game I've ever played on stream. Gaming can be frustrating because it can be a real struggle sometimes. I've never busted up a controller on purpose, or punched a hole in the wall, but I've seethed and coped a ton, and I'm alright with that. On the other hand, when YouTubers take to their channels to upload a video essay about why a game is bad, we're often not so careful with our words. I'm planning on making some more essays about this fact with the From Software catalog in mind at a later date. But overall, I've always tried to keep real criticisms I have of the Souls games to my gamer rage rants on stream that don't go anywhere, without trying to intellectualize it. There are definitely some things that the games could do better, but even when making note of that, I have to be careful. If I'm criticizing something beyond just a single side boss, or a single area, or a single quality of life feature, or a single dungeon, then I'm undermining my larger view of the game, which is that it's an impeccable masterpiece. As an aside, I'm from the suburbs outside Chicago, and while I haven't had a ton of cause to go to the city super frequently in the past couple of years, every now and again, I always return to the Art Institute of Chicago. I like Monet and Van Gogh a lot because my mom is a painter, and she instilled that in me as a child, but really, I like the modern art exhibit on the upper level. When you walk in, you're hit with my favorite piece in the whole exhibit, and I always get stuck looking at it. It's called The Earth is a Man, and it's by Roberto Matta. Its name is the same as a play that he wrote while mourning his friend Federico Garcia Lorca, who was a poet who was killed by the fascist Francoists in 1936, and there's a little caption next to the painting that tells you as much. I remember reading that and stepping back to take in this massive behemoth of a canvas. The painting was done in 1942, 6 years after the death of his friend, but the title and the visuals give such a powerful sense of grief and tumult that one time, standing there for what felt like forever, I realized I was crying a little. There's a lot of paintings like this out there where you have to stand there in person and experience how huge and overwhelming the thing is. When you step back, it just hits you, and with a surrealist work like this, you're left to ponder your own emotions. Every medium for art is like this on some level. There's a way to experience it that will change what it is you're experiencing. Anyone can tell you that a play will feel different in person than it will on video, and while artists tend to be particular about how their work specifically is experienced, that's not to say that either way of experiencing art is necessarily inferior, but that the character of the experience becomes different. Some people experience video games through video essays. That's okay, but you should know there's a lot of misinformation out there in so-called video essays, and they aren't going to give you the same experience as playing the game. I'm not going to belabor the hot takes of other Elden Ring and essayist YouTubers in this video. If people want that, then I do have another potential video in the works for you, but obviously I feel the need to gauge interest here, since that would be a pretty major endeavor. There have been a lot of YouTubers doing some variation on clickbait and hot takes about this game, and when that happens on a large enough scale, it can leave online communities with a warped perception of the game, even if they're playing it, but especially if they haven't. I've recently taken it on myself to explore the new media landscape of YouTube film analysis to see what, if anything, can be learned about the medium, and I've also been doing the same about video games behind the curtain. As such, I've also stumbled across some of the most stupendously deleterious misunderstandings possible being forwarded by other creators on the platform, as well as some unusually incisive commentaries from unexpected sources. The video that really got me to rethink how I engaged with Elden Ring, or to start thinking anyway, was by Lupine Ossuary, and titled What Joseph Anderson Got Wrong About Elden Ring. It's a pretty smart and reflective video, which is funny, because his tonality is really aggressive. I know that might turn some people off, but here's the thing. I talk like this. Offline, I talk like this all the time. I don't do it a lot in stream segments anymore, and I don't do it at all in video essays due to monetization rules on YouTube. However, I do think it rocks, and I'm glad someone's doing it. I'm also thinking of working on response videos to Lupine and Anderson about another different From Software game, just because I think their videos about it are super interesting. So if you like that kind of thing, subscribe, and call your mother. She misses you. I'll see you at Thanksgiving. It's not that I had a bad time with Elden Ring as a game. In fact, on my second playthrough, I ran a bleed build with dual katanas and Dragon Cult incantations, and I had a great time, although some bosses were still really hard. Radagon and Elden Beast in particular just ran me ragged. I have footage of that Elden Ring playthrough, and even with severe cuts, about 2 hours of the upload on my second channel is me dying to the final boss in various ways, because he's immune to bleed and Dragon Cult incantations leave the player vulnerable and use a lot of FP, so I had to learn on the fly how to beat the boss the hard way. It was hell. A whole day just spent doing one boss run for 7 or 8 hours, and I wasn't even challenge running. But slowly, over time, as I did new builds and tried new things and beat the game over and over again, I was able to kick the crap out of this game. I blasted enemies with sorceries, I used fast dexterity weapons with lightning ashes, I eradicated Malenia's health bar with the Blasphemous Blade's L2 attack, and did the same to the Elden Beast with the Sword of Night and Flame. In the end, I had tried almost every build and come away loving the experience. Every build, that is, except one. I still needed my strength build redemption arc. I started off like I always do, running around and getting what I needed for my build, doing some farming, meeting some NPCs, and thinking about whether I was really ready for this. Now's as good a time as any to talk about the tutorialization of this game. I released a video some time ago where I talked about the tutorial in this game actually, from the moment you load into the Deceased Maiden to the moment you exit into Limgrave. I still wish it was just a little bit different, but to be perfectly honest with you, that's not the whole story. Because in a larger sense, and in a better sense, all of Limgrave is the tutorial, including the Weeping Peninsula. It teaches you as much as any other game of the same genre, but it does so without the heavy-handedness of the message system or the pop-ups, which I should have mentioned are present in the tutorial. There are still things that I wish the game communicated a bit more effectively, but the great thing about a problem like this is that it's really more of a dance or a song. In fact, I'd wager that if the respec system were even easier and more accessible somehow, players would experiment more and figure out how things work even more quickly. My experience with the previous games in the Dark Souls trilogy might have worked against me, because I was expecting a pure melee build, quote-unquote, to be an R1 machine that ignored all of the other options and dodge rolled until the boss went into a semi-vulnerable neutral state. In reality, Elden Ring bosses are a hectic dance, and the boss can teach you to conform, but it can't teach you to change except by punishing you. The victory that you're playing for comes from innovating your own steps to the dance, to the song. A song with a freestyle has a melody, but not a fixed and predetermined structure, so expectations around the nature of the melody can cause some to be thrown off by the melody and reject its form. Because boss fights in Elden Ring are sort of like a duel, the innovations in player action cause responses in boss action, and the first major boss that most players run into has some of the most innovation in this kind of branching behavior. Not all game AI in video games will necessarily operate on a literal behavior tree, but that's more or less an acceptable way of imagining a hypothetical boss fight. I remember yelling about input reading when bosses were reacting to the first frame of an animation in any of my character's actions, but this is because my human senses and mind couldn't reflexively parse the distinction between the first frame of animation and my finger hitting the button. Margit the Fell was definitely a challenge, mainly because of how unpredictable he can feel, but the game allows you to return to Limgrave and continue exploring. You can even head to Caelid or Liurnia, and if you're clever you can make your way to Leyndell or Mount Gelmir before you even know it. The world of Elden Ring is vast, and on my first playthrough, just when I thought I had seen it all, I found a little bit more. Going on almost 2 years later, I think I might have a bias in the opposite direction, because it can feel like I'm rushing through the open world to get items I need for a build that I want, and that means a lot of riding Torrent, who is a good boy, and running past enemies. But I'm pretty okay with this as it turns out. Elden Ring's areas can be beaten wildly out of order, or mildly out of order, but overall I don't tend to even try. If this game had leveled enemies, like some other RPGs that shall not be named for fear of calling retribution for my past gamer essayist comments upon myself, then this would miss the charm of the game world naturally funneling you towards what feels appropriate for your level. When you step back and take it all in, the developers are doing a lot for you, but you have to be receptive to the lessons they're teaching you. The Legacy dungeons have features like this as well, where they kind of use that classic From Software design with just the right mixture of defiant obstacle and alluring path forward in the map structure to guide you to your ultimate goal. I think Raya Lucaria Academy is my favorite instance of these, but obviously Stormvale Castle, Nokron, Carian Manor, the Royal Capital, the Volcano Manor, Castle Dower, Castle Sol, and the entire Halig Tree, plus all of Crumbling Furrow Missoula are excellent examples of how well this mode of level design thrives in this game. It's quite beautiful. By the time I was in either the Halig Tree or Furrow Missoula, I knew this game had enough of what I wanted. I was a bit scared for a while that the game had a lot of innovative open world design, but not enough of the tight, oppressive environments that From Software has somehow always managed to develop into such unique atmospheres anyway. By the time I got to Leyndell this time around, obviously I had the normal amount of shard bearers under my belt, I had done some underground dungeons, I had discovered different sites of grace, and I was getting really comfortable in my build. I think it was fighting Morgott where it really set in. I liked this game, and I didn't enjoy it a bit, and I didn't enjoy it as much as the PvE experience of other games. I liked it more. Something about it was starting to feel more creative or more open-ended. I recalled something I had read a really long time ago from a Buddhist named Shunryu Suzuki. Zen mind is the beginner's mind, literally no mind. In Elden Ring, I understand the game the best when I'm free of assumptions, when I'm free of pride, when I'm entering each encounter carrying nothing and receiving everything. Being shown my own weakness is a gift in disguise, and it is painful because growth is painful. Something wonderful and mild about fighting some of the bosses that I enjoyed so much in this playthrough is that I don't feel like it was an impossible to recapture first ever experience. My favorite playthrough came after I had beaten the game fully 8 times already. Everybody always says they wish they could experience these games for the first time all over again, but in the end, the first time was nothing to the 9th time, and maybe the 15th time will be even better. Sometimes it's not hearing a beautiful piece of music for the first time that makes it special. It's hearing it and getting it for the first time, and that getting it is a process. You get it, and then you get it, and then you get it, and that is your mind evolving. I can't overstate how much every part of this playthrough felt like a breeze. Bosses and areas could still be challenging and enemies would still kill me, but the thing that made it such easy going was the sheer fact of how effortless all the effort really was. Once I had decided to let the game walk me through everything, nothing needed to be explained anymore, and nobody needed to teach me anything, because I was learning just by being there, and I was being taught just by being present. Having the backlog of knowledge about enemy moveset and item placement and things like that was useful, but the point is that once I had thought about what I needed to think about, everything that I needed to do came down to stopping my thought process and treating the game like it is what it is. Once I stopped carrying preconceptions with me, I felt unburdened, and I even started to make observations about my own experience. As I gathered the footage for this video on a new playthrough with a cold-infused claymore, running melee ashes only, just to see if I could redeem the original experience I had with this game, I also think I might have gained a little insight into the game that hadn't been there before. Like, for instance, off the top of my head, I could have sworn I remembered hearing something somewhere that someone said about Malenia being immune to posture damage, at a certain point when she goes into her waterfowl dance move. It has this little startup animation. I think this is technically untrue, or technically true but with some caveats, but I only really started noticing that really recently, because I tried damaging her more with R2s because I was actually having fun with the melee-only strat. As you may know, there are points where her waterfowl dance attack can be interrupted, but based on pure observation, I think if we're working off what we can see, then the safe conclusion is not that she isn't taking posture damage during her startup animation, it's that her posture won't break at a certain point. This is likely done by the developers to ensure that players have to deal with the waterfowl, while still incentivizing players for posture break due to how much it wrecks the boss. Poise in Elden Ring is something that has actually been updated in patches since the game has come out, but over time there have been people who have been working to spread better understandings of how this works. I want to cut people who get stuff like this wrong some slack, because it happens to the best of us. It might even be happening to me right now, and also because Melania does have an animation that you can't break her out of, even if you can interact with her at other points. But at the same time, I wanted to bring this up because of what it demonstrates about the behind-the-scenes mechanics of the game and about playing it. There is so much that even experienced players don't know, because they're working based off their experience with the final product, which we can all see, but the behind-the-scenes mechanics down to the game's code are not intuitive. In fact, sometimes game design can be counterintuitive. Because of this, it's easy for our brains to see that an action we're taking isn't paying dividends and go, well, that doesn't work. But because, as far as I'm aware, Elden Ring enemies that have taken posture damage, but which haven't been posture broken, recover their posture stat at a certain rate, therefore dealing posture damage when Melania's posture won't break might roll into subsequent attempts to break her posture, or it might only interrupt her posture recovery if she's recovering. I want to frame this as an open question about the mechanics, just as a suspicion that I have, because I was specifically inspired to go back and claymore my way through this game based on what I learned from Lupine. And in the process, I suspected I was experiencing something like this, but I'm not actually sure. Maybe I'm just hallucinating. If anyone knows more about Melania's waterfall dance startup animation, and whether we know for sure behind the scenes that she doesn't take posture damage during it, or whether she recovers her posture during it regardless of whether you're attacking her, let me know, and I promise to stop saying posture. I almost feel now like I have no complaints about Elden Ring, at least as far as the PvE is concerned. I definitely have PvP balance complaints, but as far as the solitary single-player experience goes, I think the game is almost perfect. For every small hitboxing issue or awkward design choice, there's an entire world that slows down and draws you into this beautiful experience, and it's a seamless wonder that you feel as much as anything. For me, as someone who isn't really good at this game, and who complained endlessly about Elden Beast the first and second time I beat it, the real cherry on top, pun not intended, was the final boss. I loved Elden Beast this run. It was perfect, hypnotic, soulful, entrancing, and I kept pace with the boss the entire fight. It wasn't a clean victory, and the boss itself wasn't what I'd call totally easy, but it felt easy. Not only because of how far I had come, but because what had been waiting for me on the other side was crafted for just such a purpose. When I got it, I got it. I don't call myself a Souls veteran anymore, and I plan on approaching each new Souls-like with an open mind like this from now on. I don't want to give anyone else any inaccurate impressions about this game, or any other games. Gaming can be a beautiful experience, and I think the most humbling thing about all of this is that there was this other side to me that wasn't getting enough exercise, that actually liked the learning process in the game, that was watching every slight variation in boss moveset variety to look for the right moment, to sneak in a Claymore L2 or R2, to keep piling on the poise damage. There were a lot of cheesy things about this build, like using cold damage to proc Frostbite, or using the Mimic tier to summon Ashes to proc Frostbite even faster, but I fell into these so naturally that I started enjoying the rhythm they created. Something was welling up in my mind that I didn't understand or anticipate. I was experiencing a kind of joyful frustration, like when you finally lift a really heavy set of weights and you clear a goal that you thought you couldn't clear. But it was different from that, because the destination wasn't the point. There's something about these games that never really struck me until this exact moment in my life. People talk a lot about how the From Software or Souls-like of their choice helped them to see gaming or even their private personal life in a different way. And while I've been playing them for years, I never quite got that dimension until now. But I think, with everything I've experienced, including and especially all the setbacks in my life, and all the people who have carried me, what I was loving about these games is that they were a safe struggle. They were a zone in my life where I could be as angry as I wanted without consequence, because the developers put everything there for me to strive with and against, and the NPCs were all just as depressed about the whole thing as I was. But it was safe, and I got it. I was having fun, and at the same time, I was making its inverse safe to experience. Those two things being so close together have provoked a lot of people to ask what it is about these games that does this to us. But whatever it is, it comes from a really sincere place, and you can experience that sincerity as well if you open your mind. Thank you for watching. I hope this video struck a chord with you and maybe gave you a new perspective on this game. I felt the need to make it as a kind of exploration as well as accountability. YouTubers are always finding things to complain about because putting things and people down is how the clicks roll in. But the truth is that Elden Ring was a beautiful experience. It was a masterpiece, and it was worthy of a 10 out of 10 if ever any game was. I don't think perfection is something we can encounter by not seeing flaws. I think we find perfection sometimes in those flaws, or in a new way of seeing them so they aren't really flaws at all. What caused some YouTubers to talk about this game as if it was a flop despite them claiming to actually secretly like it, I think, is the same thing that caused me to want to make a video about how good it is. The obstacle was the reward. The thing that frustrated them was the thing that made me so happy, and it didn't come easily or quickly, but over time as I adjusted my mindset. If you have any thoughts, please leave them in a comment below, and tell me if you'd like more video game and Souls content in particular, as I had a few ideas floating around in my mind, and I thought they could make for entertaining videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you all very soon.